afternoon. I'm Kevin Datani.
I'm Natasha Riga-Jones.
I'm Amy Preston and welcome to Warwick Congress Weekly. This week we'll be talking about the release of the Nunes memo, relations between the US and North Korea, as well as tense relations between the US and Venezuela.
We'll then have an update on Brexit negotiations, a selection of financial news from the past week, a preview of our conference, and recent protests in Iran.
We'll be covering new studies on phone radiation, news on the Cape Town water crisis, the migration issue in Calais, and finally, last week's cryptocurrency fall.
But first, we're going to tell you a bit about Warwick Congress, who we are, what we do, and how we do it.
Warwick Congress is one of the fastest growing student-run initiatives in the UK that aims to unite the disciplines of finance, economics, politics and law into a single platform. We host events throughout the year, culminating in our conference, which is actually taking place this weekend. We also aim to provide students with various networking and careers opportunities. Tickets are on sale now, so don't miss out on hearing speakers such as Michael Lewis, the CEO of E.ON UK, Gavin Hewitt, the BBC News editor, and 18 more. To stay up to date with everything we do, sign up for free membership on our website, www.warwickcongress.com.
Our hope is that Warwick Congress Weekly can inform our listeners, and if you have any questions, queries or opinions, then please message in and let us know. You can do so by going to www.radio.warwick.ac.uk and pressing the message tab on the top right corner. You can also tweet us at raw1251am. For our first story of the week, we head to the United States, which has hit headlines for the release of the Nunes memo last week.
The release of a 4-page document is the latest piece to add further fuel to the fire in the Trump-Russia investigation. The memo was written by aides to Republican Devin Nunes, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, a known defender of Donald Trump and a member of his transition team. The committee is meant to be investigating Russian interference in the 2016 election, yet their inquiry has descended into a struggle over the role of the FBI and Justice Department and their role in the investigation.
So what did the memo say?
Well, according to Nunes and his team, the memo's findings raise concerns with the legitimacy and legality of certain Department of Justice and FBI interactions. It also claims that they represent a troubling breakdown of legal processes established to protect the American people from abuses. The memo revolves around the wiretap on Carter Page, an advisor to the Trump campaign. The memo criticizes investigators who applied for the wiretap, saying they used material provided by a former British agent, Christopher Steele, without sufficiently disclosing their source to the judge. The Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, is also cast in a negative light for approving continued surveillance of Page. Rosenstein is a Justice Department official with authority to fire Mueller should he find evidence of misconduct.
Why did Trump allow the memo to be declassified with little objection?
Well, the release of the memo has raised concerns that Trump is looking for something to undermine and discredit the investigation of Special Counsel Mueller into the 2016 election. And critics fear that Trump will use the memo as justification for firing high-ranking officials at the FBI and the Justice Department, particularly the figure of Rosenstein, perhaps causing a constitutional crisis. The FBI was skeptical of Trump releasing the document, citing it as reckless and raising concerns over the validity of the information provided that could distort the memo's accuracy. The memo's release could be interpreted as another attack from Trump on the intelligence services and an attempt to fracture the relationship between the Justice Department and the FBI. Staying on Trump news, his recent rhetoric has continued to threaten the peacemaking mission of South Korean leader Moon Jae-in.
Recent efforts from the South Korean president has seen him attempt to use the Winter Olympics to advocate a form of sporting diplomacy with Kim Jong-un's North Korean regime. Kim's last-minute acceptance of Moon's invitation to send a North Korean delegation to the Games, which get underway in Pyongyang on Friday, raised hopes that tensions with the US and its allies over the North's nuclear weapons build-up and missile tests may be diffused. The two Koreas will also field a joint women's ice hockey team in the Games and march under a unification flag in the opening parade.
So why is Trump being hostile to efforts of reconciliation between the North and the South?
Well, the US president has characterised conciliation efforts as appeasement, demanding South Korea pay more for its defence and threatened unlimited military action to, in his words, totally destroy North Korea. Although support for reconciliation has fallen in recent years among South Koreans, reductions in tension would be welcome, considering the apparent use of nuclear brinkmanship during the last year. The Trump administration, alongside being sceptical of Moon's left-leaning liberal agenda, is worried that the Winter Olympics will be a propaganda stunt. Also, Trump ramped up tensions again, insulting North Korea's ruler in personal terms, condemning human rights abuses, and vowing to exert maximum pressure on the regime. The danger is that North Korea treats Moon's attempts to form closer ties with caution. This may lead to relations between the North and South remaining fragile, as Trump continues to be intent on fracturing relations between the two. Now handing over to Tash, who is going to tell us about the recent tensions between the US and Venezuela.
During his trip around South America, US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson had announced that the United States is considering restricting imports of Venezuelan crude oil and exports of US refined products to Venezuela, arguing that such efforts would put pressure on the socialist Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, to return to the constitution. Many critics of Maduro have claimed that since coming into power in 1999, his Socialist Party has eroded Venezuela's democratic institutions and mismanaged its economy, with the Supreme Court having already banned several prominent opposition figures from taking part in elections.
So what's being done to counter these quite obviously undemocratic actions?
Well, Venezuela has already had sanctions imposed upon 12 members of Maduro's government, including Maduro himself, by the US and EU as part of efforts to punish Venezuela for its numerous accusations of electoral abuses and human rights violations. These new restrictions on Venezuela's all-important oil industry represent an escalation of financial pressure on the OPEC member to adhere to its constitution. However, sanctioning Venezuela's oil sector could potentially damage US companies and cost US jobs, with Venezuela being a major source of crude imports for the US market, as well as being a key market for American oil refiners. For example, in 2016, the US imported 0.72 million barrels of petroleum a day from Venezuela, making up 8% of gross petroleum imports. Similarly, Venezuela is currently gripped by severe shortages of food and medicine, brought on by a recent period of low oil prices, declining production, and economic mismanagement. As a result, many Latin American governments have said that they are unwilling to take steps that would worsen the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, such as through imposing sanctions. Countering such concerns, Tillerson stated, "One of the aspects of considering sanctioning oil is what effect it would have on the Venezuelan people, and it is a step that might bring this crisis to an end. Not doing anything is also asking the Venezuelan people to suffer." In considering oil sanctions, the US must also weigh concerns from Caribbean countries, which rely on cheap Venezuelan oil. Tillerson is expected to raise the issue when he travels to the Jamaican capital of Kingston tomorrow before heading back to Washington. And as this is a story which doesn't look like it's going to go away anytime soon, we'll keep you updated each week as it develops. Now back to the UK for an update on Brexit negotiations.
Senior government sources have revealed that supporters of the popular backbench Conservative MP, Jacob Rees-Mogg, are trying to ensure he wins a possible leadership contest in the coming months, even though he has strongly denied harbouring ambitions for the role. The revelation has come as supporters of Boris Johnson and Michael Gove have stated that they want to strike a deal with Rees-Mogg to join them in a Brexit dream team, making him the new Chancellor. Speculation over the leadership has been rife in recent weeks after reports that Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, which represents Conservative MPs, has almost received the 48 letters required to trigger a vote of no confidence in Theresa May as leader of the party, with pro-Brexit MPs having become increasingly concerned as to whether May will deliver a clean Brexit, which will end in Brussels' rule in Britain and allow it to have an independent trade policy. Boris Johnson has reportedly privately told supporters that while he wants them to rally around May, he is ready for a future contest. However, Rees-Mogg has denied reports that he had been approached by supporters of Johnson and Gove to form such a Brexit dream team, with the offer of being Chancellor, stating, "The first I knew about it was when the journalist who wrote the story called me about it." Sources close to Rees-Mogg believe that such a spin is being put out by his opponents on the Remain side of the argument.
So how has Downing Street reacted to these accusations?
Well, Downing Street has moved to reassure Tory Brexiteers that Theresa May is committed to taking Britain out of the EU customs union, amid growing speculation that she could face a leadership challenge over the issue, with anger rising amongst Tory Eurosceptics over suggestions that the Prime Minister was considering softening her Brexit stance. Number 10 sources have insisted the UK would categorically be leaving the customs union. The move by Downing Street came after reports that May was seeking to join pro-EU cabinet ministers Philip Hammond and Amber Rudd in advocating an ongoing customs union with the EU. Meanwhile, on Friday, Jacob Rees-Mogg was caught in the middle of a scuffle at a student event in Bristol. He had been speaking at the University of the West England's Politics and International Relations Society on Friday when protesters appeared at the back of the room, some with scarves over their faces and one wearing dark glasses. Rees-Mogg walked into the back of the hall to talk to the protesters, and they shouted bigot and other insults, later resulting in a scuffle with Rees-Mogg caught in the middle. An investigation is currently underway to see if any criminal offences were committed.
So here's a section of financial news from the past week. Continuing their recent sell-off, US equities were sharply lower on Monday morning after the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed more than 600 points lower than it opened on Friday, marking only the 9th time in history that this has happened. The sell-off is attributed to investors being fearful about the sudden acceleration in bond yields, which increases companies' borrowing costs amid increasing concerns over inflation and aggressive policy tightening in the USA. According to the S&P Global Ratings, the number of defaults by highly leveraged companies could rise significantly amid tightening credit concerns. The agency estimates that the proportion of corporations whose debt-to-earnings ratio exceeds 5 to 1 stood at 37% in 2017 compared to 32% just before the financial crisis, and removing the easy money punch bowl in the form of low interest rates could trigger the next default cycle. Speaking at a town hall event in British Columbia, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said, "Canada is willing to walk away from NAFTA if the US proposes a bad deal. We will not be pushed around. Cancelling it would be extremely harmful and disruptive to people in the US. We're going to keep negotiating in good faith, but we're not going to take any old deal." Amid fears of running up huge losses, Lloyds is barring its credit card customers from buying Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. This follows similar moves by US rivals JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Citigroup, who all announced similar bans on crypto purchases via credit cards on Friday. Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Jay Lee is free to leave prison after a high court shortened his 5-year jail sentence in the bribery scandal that had rocked South Korea. The ruling may end its leadership vacuum at a company which is controlled by the Lee family through an intricate structure of cross-shareholdings. The viewership for the Super Bowl this past week is estimated to have been smaller than last year's. However, figures have been released that show the average cost of advertising was $7.7 million during the event. So we're gonna, for those listening on the radio and on our podcast, we're actually going live on Facebook now. So we're just waiting for that to be set up. How are we looking? Are we good? Are we good to go? Here we go. So we are live on Facebook, I hope. Welcome, Facebook viewers, likers of Warwick Congress. I'm joined today by Raj Shah, who is one of the coordinators for this year's event.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you might want to come closer to your microphone. There we go.
Once again, it was a
There we go.
pleasure to be on the radio show and to see all your hard work come into action over the radio show.
Well, thank you for coming. So the reason we've got Raj on this week is because we know a lot of you have a lot of questions about Warwick Congress. So Raj is hopefully here to dispel any fears that you have and just walk us through what the event's going to be like. So, well, I guess the first thing to start is when they get, or if people are staying, if people are coming from abroad, have we got accommodation sorted for them?
Yes, exactly. We've got over 100 external delegates coming to the conference. Some of them will be lodged in our hotel in Leamington Spa. Others will be staying with walk-on team members. But overall, emails have been sent out, and so we're expecting quite a few externals over the weekend.
So when externals arrive, what time are we expecting them here on campus?
So essentially, registration on campus begins at 4. Registration in the hotel begins at 2. All registration information is being sent out in emails. So if you're unsure, just check your email or send us a message on our Facebook page.
So a lot of people might be quite curious as to what they should be wearing to the conference. So what do you suggest that people wear?
So as it's a academic and careers conference, the dress code is business. And then moving on to the grand gala, as it's like an evening event, we'd expect people to possibly wear black ties or at least put on some nice formal evening wear.
Okay, fair enough. Sounds good. I'll be there. Have we got any other drinks events sorted for our delegates?
Yes, we do. So on the Friday evening, once the talks finish, we'll all head to Clink Cellar Bar in Leamington Spa between 10 and 12 p.m, where we'll just enjoy some drinks and socialise and get to know delegates.
And then let's switch back to Friday. So Friday, delegates arrive, they register between 4 and 6. Then what happens?
So essentially Friday, the main focus is on innovation. Our two speakers are Jean-François Mazur and Paul Andrews, and they will be introducing the overarching theme of innovation before we move into the subtopics and panel debates over the conference weekend.
So moving through the weekend, on Saturday morning, I believe we start at 9:30?
Yes, that's correct. Late registration begins at 9 and then the talks begin at 9:30.
So if you bought an Essentials ticket, you need to be on campus for 9 to register for the event. And then at 9:30, we have our first talk, which is actually given by you, opening the day.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to meeting the delegates and giving the opening. We'll then be hearing from Professor Gabriel Felbermeier from Munich, then moving on to Gavin Hewitt from the BBC, before we break up for our career and speaker seminars. In the afternoon, we'll come back for our environment and infrastructure panel debate.
That looks really good. The lineup for that is awesome. If you want to check out the lineup for that, it is on our website. But with Chris Huhn, to name one, former cabinet minister.
Yeah, Michael Lewis,
CEO
of E.ON UK, Georg Kasperkovitz, CEO of Consumer Packaging at Mondi Group.
So you don't really want to miss that one at all. And then in the evening, who have we got?
In the evening, we have Dr. Claire Gamage from Bristol, and then we have Dr. Katrin Tin, from Imperial.
I feel like I'm putting you in a bad spot here. So they'll also be talking about trade from the law and finance perspectives. And then, of course, we have our grand gala on Saturday evening, which I'm looking forward to. We'll have speakers there. There are a very, very limited number of tickets left for that. So if you do want to be there, I don't know if we're allowed to say which speakers are there, but there will be speakers, there will be firms. So if you want to get to know them up close and personal, as well as have a really good meal and just a good time with loads of people, then buy your tickets for that.
Even if you have only just bought a normal conference ticket, you can still upgrade to the gala. Just send us a message on our Facebook page and we'll sort it out for you.
There you go. And then moving on to Sunday, which will unfortunately be the final day of the conference. What are we focusing on? So
Sunday, the focus shifts to social media, the making of new politics. We're very excited to have speakers such as David Glenwright, a representative from Vice, Akim Famiyuwa, and then in the afternoon, then we move on to our fintech panel debate, which will be more centered around cryptocurrencies and blockchain.
So there you go, action-packed conference weekend focusing on innovation, global trade, and social media. What would you say to anyone at home, anyone listening to this or watching on Facebook that hasn't bought their ticket yet? What would you say to them?
I would honestly just say that for me personally, obviously I'm biased, but Warwick Congress has really been a truly life-changing project to be part of. And I think the fact that we've managed to establish this conference in such a short space of time almost speaks for itself. So it is, I guess it's something that's worth taking part in your time at Warwick.
So there you go, from our coordinator this year, Raj Shah. He says buy your ticket now. They start from £25 online at www.warwickcongress.com/tickets. Thank you very much to our Facebook viewers. We hope to see you this weekend. And
thank you very much.
We will get back on with the podcast. So I believe Tash has an update for us on controversial protests in Iran.
29 people have been arrested in connection with recent protests in Iran against the compulsory Islamic veil for women, with police in Tehran on Friday saying that the protesters had been deceived by foreign forces. The protests against the requirement that women cover their hair with the Islamic veil picked up pace earlier this week in Tehran and other cities, with witness accounts and social media videos indicating that more than 24 women had removed their scarves in public and waved them on sticks like flags. The Trump administration, which had condemned Iran over a range of issues including its suppression of dissent, commended the anti-hijab demonstrations on Friday, with State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert stating, "People should be free to choose the clothes they wear and practice their faith as they desire."
Is the compulsory veil the only grievance protesters are rising for in Iran?
No, so 6 other activists were arrested in raids around the country on Thursday, accused of involvement in general anti-government protests that have erupted in 80 cities, gripping the country for more than a week in December and January. Security forces suppressed those protests and 25 people were killed, but sporadic demonstrations continue to crop up around Iran. Hardline officials have said that the protesters are responsible for those deaths, with the government having said that some of the dead committed suicide, a claim that has been angrily rejected by government critics. One of the hardliners, Ahmad Khatami, the leader of Friday Prayers, said that protesters who kill are unlawful and the verdict for that is the death penalty. Mr. Khatami also stated that Iran would never stop producing missiles, which the United States contends is a violation of UN Security Council resolutions. He said, "We will produce as many missiles as we wish." For our next story, we are going to be talking about recent studies on the health effects of mobile phone radiation.
2 studies conducted on mice and rats to learn about the effects of mobile phone radiation were published last week. Research has shown that radiation from mobile phones caused cancerous tumours on male rats, but early reactions to the report indicate that using our mobile phones does not expose us to a major health risk. The 2 studies have been conducted by the USA's National Toxicology Program as part of a $25 million research project. In the studies, which lasted 2 years, rats and mice of both sexes ran freely in specially constructed reverberation chambers, where their entire bodies were exposed to radiation. The male rats developed tumours in the tissues around their heart, but female rats and mice were found to have no such effects, however. In fact, the results showed that the male rats exposed to radiation actually lived longer and had lower levels of age-related kidney disease.
So what do the findings mean for us who aren't as closely related to rats?
Good question. Well, there are actually mixed opinions by experts in the health sector, but overall it looks like the new research shows that phone radiation poses no major health risk to humans. Expert reactions to the findings suggest that they will not dramatically change the debate over mobile phone safety. In fact, both critics and supporters of current safety standards claim that the new studies support their points of view. Some argue, like the public health physician David Carpenter, that this is the first clear evidence showing that this kind of radiation increases risks for all kinds of cancer. Others, however, predict that the new studies won't affect the way we use our phones on a daily basis. In fact, one of those who helped lead the new studies at the NTP has said that he has no intention of changing his mobile phone habits. Jeffrey Shurin, director of the FDA's Centre for Devices and Radiological Health, has said in a statement that the findings do not suggest that US regulations on phone radiation need to be tightened. He said that the new studies, when combined with previous research, have given us the confidence that the current safety limits for phone radiation remain acceptable for protecting the public health. The US Food and Drug Administration notes that phones emit low levels of radio frequency energy that are non-ionizing, and so this means they are not considered strong enough to permanently damage biological tissue, including DNA. And our next story is South Africa hits headlines last week as Cape Town may be the first city in the world to run out of water.
Cape Town in South Africa is in the midst of a very severe drought and, like Amy said, could be the first city to run out of water. And although efforts have been made to reduce water consumption in the city, officials have announced a plan to shut off their taps to homes and businesses on the 12th of April. And this date is being called Day Zero.
So how likely is it that the city will actually have to resort to Day Zero?
Yeah, it sounds quite apocalyptic.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, and ominous. But many think that it is inevitable. For months, citizens have been urged to consume less water, and with Day Zero approaching rapidly, citizens are worrying about the day the taps will run dry and may have to stand in lines surrounded by armed guards just to collect rations of drinking water. In January, the city requested steeper cuts, asking residents to consume just 50 litres per day, which is less than 1/6 of what the average American uses. City officials warned this week that if consumption doesn't drop steeply and quickly, everyone will be forced into Day Zero, where citizens will have to live on far less, about 25 litres a day. And to put this into context, 25 litres a day is typically less than 4 minutes of showering.
So what other measures have the city put in place to reduce water consumption?
Well, over the last 20 years, the city has been increasingly recognising the threat of short water supply, so this isn't something that's creeped up on them. But Cape Town reduced water use from its 6 major reservoirs, which hold up to 230 billion gallons of water. And the city's also won several international water management awards and even tries to shame top water users by publishing their names. However, research fellow David Olivier has identified the issue of not just reducing water consumption, but changing people's attitudes. He said that the fundamental problem is the kind of lifestyle that we're living. There's almost a sense of entitlement that we have a right to consume as much as we want. The attitude and reaction of most posts on social media is indignation. It's, we pay our taxes and therefore we should be as comfortable as possible. Some argue that if water consumption can be reduced by another 25%, then the tap should stay open at least until the start of May. But Cape Town has suffered 3 consecutive years of drought, and the largest dam has mostly evaporated or been sucked dry. As Day Zero approaches, JP Smith, an alderman responsible for safety and security, has said that if anyone has doubted the reality of climate change, they certainly can't now. Going back to Europe, where the recent surge of migrants coming into the camps in Calais has led to a worrying increase of violence among the migrant communities present in the French port.
4 migrant teenagers were left in a critical condition last week after a mass brawl erupted and guns were pulled out, leading to more than 12 people being wounded. A hospital in Calais said they had admitted 22 people last Thursday, with the 4 teenagers, aged 16 to 18 years old, needing surgery.
What was the source of the violence?
Well, the brawl was said to have erupted between the Afghan and the Eritrean communities in the Calais migrant camps after tension rose during food handouts. Originally, the brawl started between around 100 Eritreans and 30 Afghans, but more joined in, with the 4 teenagers in critical condition hailing from Eritrea. The use of firearms highlights a growing problem in the Calais camps, with it being said that the gun was fired by one of the many smugglers that are profiting from the migrant crisis. Smuggler gangs have become a huge problem for the French authorities, pitting communities against each other, which has only escalated the violence. The French Interior Minister, Gérard Collomb, responded in the wake of this incident, stating that we have reached an escalation of violence that has become unbearable for both those from Calais and the migrants. This is a level of violence never seen before.
So, what other incidents of violence have occurred in Calais recently?
Well, on the same day as this incident, another fight broke out at an industrial estate 3 miles away between Eritreans and Afghans, with 100 Eritreans wielding iron rods and attacking around 20 Afghans. The police had to intervene to protect the 20 Afghan migrants, with security reinforcements being deployed. More violence also broke out later in the day in the same industrial area, and in wake of this, more violence is expected in the coming weeks, intensifying as more and more migrants come in and more smugglers operate in the area. For our final story, Amy is going to tell us about the cryptocurrency fall last week.
Last week, the value of Bitcoin continued to dramatically fall, plunging below $8,000 on Friday morning for the first time since last November, with some critics pointing to the bubble bursting and governments and firms around the world calling for its regulation. However, this rapid fall of Bitcoin seems to be a general trend amongst all cryptocurrencies. On Friday, Ethereum was down 12% and Ripple was down 13% compared to Thursday. This trend is expected to continue as well. In fact, on Friday, over 24 hours, an astonishing $112 billion was wiped off the global cryptocurrency market. On Friday, the total value stands at $405 billion, after losing around 20% of its value.
So are the causes of this quite significant fall known?
Well, recently the cryptocurrency market has been barraged by negative press and calls for its regulation, even calling for a total ban on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. For example, India's finance minister, Arun Jaitley, has said that the country wants to eliminate the use of digital currencies in criminal activities. This means more regulation will squeeze the cryptocurrency in the country. There have also been worries that Bitcoin's price was so high due to market manipulation, and it is now only falling back to reality. In fact, it was reported that the US Commodity Futures Trading Commission is investigating whether market manipulation was at play in the rise of virtual currencies, which could lead to heavy regulation of the cryptocurrency. Another bad piece of press for Bitcoin was when it was revealed that Facebook will ban all advertisements promoting Bitcoin and all other cryptocurrencies. This is in order to prevent people from seeing adverts for financial products and services frequently associated with misleading or deceptive promotional practices, as Facebook has said. Ads that violate this policy will be banned on Facebook's core app, but also other applications such as Instagram.
So do you think that cryptocurrencies can recover in such an adverse environment against them?
Well, on Saturday, cryptocurrency markets did somewhat stabilise. Bitcoin got back up close to $9,000 on Saturday morning, with it being up 7% up from 24 hours before. Other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and Ripple were up significantly higher than Bitcoin, with Ethereum hitting $945 during the day. However, these numbers are significantly off their all-time highs, and they may struggle to get back up to that value in an environment which is becoming more and more negative towards cryptocurrencies.
Here's a summary of all the stories you've heard today. The release of the Nunes memo, a 4-page document released on Friday, is at the heart of a firestorm over Donald Trump, Russia, and Special Counsel Robert Mueller. The document attempts to undermine the investigation into Trump by discrediting the intelligence services responsible for investigating him. Trump's rhetoric has threatened peacemaking in the Korean Peninsula. South Korean President Moon Jae-in's recent attempts at reconciliation with North Korea have been opposed by Trump during his recent State of the Union address. US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has announced that the US is considering restricting imports of Venezuelan crude oil and exports of US refined products to Venezuela in an effort to put pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to return to the constitution after eroding Venezuela's democratic institutions and mismanaging its economy.
Theresa May has confirmed that she is committed to taking Britain out of the European Customs Union amid growing speculation that she could face a leadership challenge with Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg over the issue in order to form a Brexit dream team with Michael Gove. Jacob Rees-Mogg has denied reports of such a contest. 29 people have been arrested in connection with recent protests in Iran against a compulsory Islamic veil for women. Witness accounts and social media videos indicate that more than 24 women have removed their scarves to publicly condemn the suppression. 2 studies conducted on mice and rats to learn about the effect of mobile phone radiation have been published last week. Research has shown that radiation from mobile phones cause cancerous tumours on male rats. Early reactions to the report indicate that mobile phone radiation does not pose a major risk to humans.
As Cape Town continues to suffer a severe drought. Sorry about that. As Cape Town continues to suffer a severe drought, it may be the first city in the world to run out of water. If water consumption is not dramatically reduced, city officials plan to shut off their taps on the 12th of April. This day is being called Day Zero. Violence escalates in the migrant camps in Calais, with communities being pitted against each other by people smugglers. And cryptocurrencies plummeted at the end of the week, with over $100 billion being wiped off the market in just 24 hours. This is sending strong negative signals to investors.
Tickets for our conference from the 9th to the 11th of February are on sale now, so buy yours to see world-class speakers like Professor Gabriel Felbermayr from the University of Munich, Jean-François Mazot, Head of Private Banking at Societe Generale, and Gavin Hewitt, the BAFTA and Emmy Award-winning BBC News editor, and many more. Buy your tickets now at www.warwickcongress.com/tickets from just £25.
Becoming a member of Warwick Congress has never been easier. With exclusive interviews, articles, and career events for our members, don't miss out on the benefits that Warwick Congress membership can provide. So sign up now at www.warwickcongress.com.
We're all in for a very, very busy weekend this coming weekend with our conference, effectively in 3 days. So stay tuned on all our social media channels if you can't make it, and you can keep up to date with everything that we do, with daily articles and videos published. You've been listening to Warwick Congress Weekly. Our podcast will be back at the same time next Tuesday.